I still remember the day my life changed forever. It was a March afternoon in suburban Chicago, with a biting wind blowing through the small streets. I held the crumpled lottery ticket, bought in a hurry at the local grocery store because I had a strange feeling that day. The night before, I had dreamed of a flock of birds flying across a deep blue sky. And I told myself, today will be different. When the winning numbers flashed on the TV screen, $1,750,000 screamed across the shabby living room where the carpet was worn and the smell of my mother's morning coffee still lingered. "Mom! Dad! I won!" I shouted, my voice cracking with excitement. My mother, who was cleaning the kitchen, dropped the mop on the floor. My father, who was sitting in his favorite armchair with the local newspaper, looked up, his eyes shining as if he had just heard the news of a football victory. I thought they would be happy, hug me, or at least laugh with me. But they weren't. Within minutes of my telling the story, the atmosphere in the house suddenly darkened like a dark cloud. "You should give us the money," my dad said, his voice low and authoritative, as if it were a given. "We'll manage it for you. You're young. You'll spend it all and lose it." My mom nodded, her hands still clutching the mop as if clinging to my dad's logic. "That's right, honey. We need to fix the roof, pay off our credit cards, and your sister needs money for college. You can't be selfish and keep all that money." I was stunned. This was my chance, a chance to escape the monotony of my life, working part-time at a coffee shop, living with my parents in a small house with cracks in the walls and endless arguments. I had always dreamed of opening a small bakery where I could bake delicious bread and cupcakes with vanilla frosting, something that brought me peace in the midst of chaos. "No," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm despite my pounding heart. "I want to keep this money. I will use it to build my future." The argument exploded like a summer storm. My father shouted that I was ungrateful, that he and my mother had raised me, that I had no right to keep the money for myself. My mother cried, calling me a disobedient child, saying that I was turning my back on the family. It culminated in my father pointing at the door, his face red with anger. "If you don't give me the money, get out of my house right now." I stood there looking at him, then at my mother, who just bowed her head and said nothing. I had no choice. I stuffed a few clothes into my backpack, tucked the prize lottery ticket into my pocket, and walked out of my once-home home under a gray sky. The next few days were a series of trials. I rented a cheap room in downtown Chicago, where the smell of stale cigarettes and honking horns echoed through the thin walls. I lived on the few remaining coins, waiting for the winnings to be deposited into my account, a slow process with tons of legal paperwork. Loneliness surrounded me. I had no family, no close friends, only a fragile dream and the lottery ticket to motivate me. But then, one spring morning, as I sat in the park with a homemade sandwich, life began to change. Sarah appeared, a brunette with a warm smile working at a local charity. She saw me sitting on the bench, asked a few questions, and before I knew it, we had been talking for hours. Sarah was not only a new friend, but also a light in my dark days. She introduced me to a financial advisor named Mark, who helped me invest some of my lottery winnings wisely while keeping enough to make my dream come true. A year later, Dream Dough, my little bakery, opened on a tree-lined street in Chicago. It was a bright spring day, with the smell of baking bread and cupcakes filling the air. More and more customers came, from people rushing to work in the morning to children running around asking their mothers for cakes. I felt the true joy of baking, of hearing my customers laugh, of seeing them leave with a smile on their faces. My life was now busy, but meaningful. As time went on, the bakery became more than just a place for me to make a living. It became a part of my community. I started hosting free baking workshops for kids in the neighborhood, inviting Sarah to help. She had become my best friend, and sometimes I wondered if something more was brewing between us. But I wasn't in a hurry. I wanted to enjoy every moment of this new life. Then, one autumn afternoon, as I stood behind the counter, the doorbell rang. I looked up, and my heart stopped again. My parents walked in. They looked different from the last time I'd seen them. Dad's hair was grayer, his back slightly hunched. Mom's was thinner, her eyes sad. They stood there, hesitant, as if not knowing where to start. I stopped wiping the counter and walked out, trying to keep my composure despite the turmoil inside. My mother began, her voice trembling. I'm sorry. We were wrong to push you, to send you away. We thought we were right, but now, seeing you like this... She paused, tears streaming down her cheeks. My father, who rarely showed emotion, cleared his throat and said, I'm proud of you. I didn't know you could do this, on your own. He held out an old box of cookies, my childhood favorites, which my mother used to make at Christmas. Consider them a consolation gift, he said, his lips twitching into a rare smile. I stood there watching them, my heart a mixture of emotions. Part of me wanted to scream, to relive the pain of being kicked out of my home. But then I looked around the bakery, the shelves of pastries, the laughter of the customers, the life I had built for myself. I realized that resentment wouldn't change anything, but forgiveness would. I walked over and hugged my mother, then my father. I'm sorry too, I said. I didn't want to lose my family. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. We sat down at a small table in the shop. I made coffee, Dad's favorite, and brought out some freshly baked cupcakes. Mom told me they'd seen my bakery in the local paper, in a feature on Chicago's small businesses. You're famous, she laughed, the first time I'd seen her smile genuinely since I'd left. Dad nodded. I was wrong to think you couldn't do anything with that money. You've built a world. We talked for a long time that afternoon. I told them about the early days, about Sarah, about the nights I'd spent learning how to balance the books. They told me about the empty months when I was gone, about how they'd realized they'd been wrong to put money before family. As the sun set, Mom and Dad got up to leave. Come over for dinner next weekend, Mom said, holding my hand. I'll make your favorite casserole. I nodded, smiling. I'll bring you some cake. After they left, I stood alone in the bakery, looking out the window. The autumn wind blew, carrying the scent of dry leaves and the scent of cake still in the air. I thought about my journey, from a boy kicked out of his house with a lottery ticket in hand to a bakery owner standing on his own 2 feet. $1,750,000 not only gave me freedom, but also taught me the value of perseverance, forgiveness, and family love. A few weeks later, I asked Sarah out to dinner, not as friends, but as a gentle confession. She said yes, and her smile under the Chicago streetlights was brighter than any dream I could have ever dreamed. My bakery was now not only a place where I pursued my passion, but also a bridge to heal my family, a beginning to something more beautiful in the future. In Chicago, USA, I found true happiness, not just in the lottery money, but in the relationships I built and the days I painted with my own hands.